Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Making Disciples podcast. I'm Jeremy Smith, Vick Green. We're back, about to get into probably one of my least favorite parts of the disciple
Okay.
making. Not because
All
it's
right.
not awesome. It is. I know I say everything's my favorite and everything's awesome in this process, but this was the hardest part of the process for me to wrap my mind around and really sort of get super excited about the design part of this. We'll get into it in a minute. Vic, I've got a question for you.
Ready.
To get started. I don't know how this is going to hit you. This is a super hard hitting question, but it's a source of controversy in my office area today. What color is this shirt? Is this shirt gray or green to you?
I mean, it's grayish green, but I actually was going to go with the lightest of greens. That's what I was going to say.
You were going to say that? You've been thinking that this whole time until I asked it, just brought it out? Okay.
I don't know if I was thinking that. Probably had you not asked, I would have just if you had asked me after we got off, I would have said, oh, he was wearing a gray shirt. Am I sitting the fence well enough? I feel like I'm doing a really good job at not answering.
And if you're not watching this and you're listening to it, I'm sorry about this intro. It won't be that helpful for you. Go to the YouTube channel and subscribe on YouTube as well. There you go. There it is for that. Right. Everybody tells me it's green and kind of that light green, but I'm seeing gray. That when I bought it, it was gray. So I'm a beholder.
I could go both ways. So I think you're safe either way.
That's why people tune into this podcast to find the hard hitting questions, to find answers to the hard hitting questions in life.
You've always said, what is it? You have a face for radio. You have a wardrobe for radio, Jeremy. So.
Okay. I've never worn a hat to the podcast though, which
you're missing out, dude.
Okay. Next time maybe. All right, here we go. We're jumping in. Last episode, we talked about our dream disciple, which is one of my favorite parts of this because it answers the fundamental question that I think we all have to answer. And that was haunting me for years and years. But here's the next part of it. How do we create those kind of disciples? We're moving up one whole sort of area of the vision plan from motivation to method. And we're going into talking about a discipleship pathway, everybody's favorite topic. This is really like a divide. Last episode we talked about, dream disciple can get both kinds of thinkers on board.
That's right.
And excited. Pathway, I'm not sure. I think we're talking about one style of thought or thinker in particular that's going to be excited about this one.
Yeah, usually the room is divided, and by the end of it, half of the room is like, I don't care what we decide, y'all just decide. And the other is like throwing down, fighting. And so, what's interesting, so the pathway, I love that you put it like you connect it to the dream disciple because you can't separate the two. Yet a lot of times we do. We talked about this last time, like you've got to know what success looks like before you build a strategy for it. And so the dream disciple really is the outcome. A lot of times I see people jump to a method, they jump to a strategy, but man, you can't solve the strategy problems until you actually know the disciples you're developing on the other end. I mean, you can, I guess, it's just not going to be very effective. And so we've got to start with that dream disciple and then go to the pathway.
Well, okay, let's jump into that question then. What is a discipleship pathway? I think a lot of people think they know what that is. It's a buzzword. Yeah. I think in the church world right now. So what is one? And then what does make it effective? You mentioned effectiveness a minute ago.
Yeah. I think it's your pathway is what is the essential path for someone to become your dream disciple. So think about it. It's looking kind of at your church strategy, but from an individual's lens. And so if you were to tell somebody new to your church, how do they become the dream disciple? And what it is your dream disciple is looking at the individual traits within that person. The pathway is going to look at your organizational environments. So your worship service, your small groups, your volunteer teams, how do they all work together to develop your disciple? Another way you can think about it is, where does Joe go to grow? And so does he go to worship? Does he go to small groups? Does he go to D groups? If so, how do they work together? And what order do I go to? It's answering all of those questions. What this also does for your staff is it helps them begin to see what are the most important environments that we do, and what is the win, what's the purpose in each program environment as it relates to developing our people. So your discipleship pathway is the how your people grow. And so that's going to be the pathway. Here's the thing though that is interesting. How does it, like, what makes it effective is come back to COVID. We talked about it before. COVID was a national disciple making test or a national pop quiz on disciple making. If your people own the mission, or if your people lose your programming, will they own the mission? And they missed it. They by and large, they failed that, right? The second half of that, though, is it connects to discipleship pathways, strategies, and being effective. During COVID, what a lot of people figured out was that when you took away that program, they didn't know what to do. Even the people that were always in your church building, every time the doors were open, didn't know once they couldn't. And so I hear all the time, like deacons who aren't reading their Bible and people who were always at every event, but like they don't really know how to grow in their faith for their own self. Here's the thing that happened when it came to developing church strategies is that we were using program engagement to determine success. And the thing is, program engagement is a byproduct of your strategy, but it's not the purpose behind your strategy. And here's what I mean is that the purpose of it is so that they may become a disciple maker, that they begin to live a disciple making lifestyle. As they go through steps of your pathway, they will get more engaged in your small groups, more in your volunteer teams. But what we did is we looked and made the deeper engagement the metric of success, and made deeper engagement in our church the goal. And what happened at COVID did is it exposed it, said that actually, if you don't have the dream disciple, if you're not talking about a disciple making lifestyle, that actually you're a fully engaged church member can be fool's gold. You can think you're winning, but it's actually falling short of the mission. And so what makes an effective pathway is we actually use a different end goal for our pathway. The end goal is not that they are serving or doing more in the church, but it's, are they reaching their kingdom circle? We've talked a lot about that, but just for the language, in case somebody hasn't heard it, the kingdom circle, what that is that every person in your church has a circle of influence that they're called to bring the kingdom of God into. And so your pathway, what makes it success is how many people is it helping send out to reach their kingdom circle? And that metric actually helps us hold to a disciple making lifestyle, not just are they attending our church service more.
I remember seeing that flip happen real time with the guys in my very first D group. There were two guys in particular sort of plateaued in their faith, and they were coming to me asking me what they should do. And I kept talking to them about this thing or that thing, trying to plug them into the programs of our church. And they were still sort of in the same place. And so I said, hey, why don't you try to do this group with me where we learn what it means to be a disciple. Now, we were still using the marks of a disciple that Replicate gives at that point. We didn't have, which, by the way, highly recommend. I don't know how we didn't say that in the last episode. If you don't have your dream disciple yet, there are some sort of standard templates you can use in the meantime to help people. But we were still using that. And I said, hey, why don't you jump into understanding what it means to be a disciple, and me discipling them and us doing that together. And then here's what happened. They caught fire for Jesus, and they started doing all the things that I'd wanted them to do the whole time. They started engaging in the programs, exactly what you're saying. Started attending and giving and serving and doing all that more when they were engaged in understanding what it means to be a disciple and in that relationship with the Lord in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because you're aligning it to people's purpose, like you're helping them, especially with Kingdom Circle, you're helping them figure out how to make a difference in their unique way with the people in their life. And it ends up always coming back to also help the church in that and step into all those other spaces as well. Okay, so that's what a pathway is. That's what makes one effective. Let's go back, golly, now like 5 years ago, or so, 4 years ago. I don't know how many it was, but we started working on the pathway at Crosspoint. Which, for the record, doing it with 6 sites and as large a church as you guys, I mean, it's pretty simple, right? And so
Right.
not a lot of opinions and unique expressions to navigate. So we start doing the pathway with you guys. What do you remember as you went through that process? What do you remember to being some of the challenges of developing your pathway?
I think one challenge was like a philosophical challenge, and then we had a manifestation of that in one part of the pathway in particular. I think the philosophical obstacle that some of us, including me, had to get over was we have to create the perfect pathway. Like, like it has to be exactly, it's going to move people. And this is, if they just do these things, it's going to create the perfect kind of disciples we're trying to create. And just coming to the understanding that there's no such thing as a perfect pathway. And we know disciple making is not, and making disciples is not linear. It's here, there, it's everywhere. And then you kind of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. So that was a little bit of a philosophical obstacle, that we're not going to get this perfect. We're just going to try to help people move, like understanding the real reason for this, to become these kind of disciples and be deployed in their unique role of leadership. That manifested itself in the middle step for us. So our pathway is connect with Christ, develop in community, and deploy on mission, which is a total flip from come, meet, grow, serve, which kind of what it was before. I've talked about that before. That serve became serve the church. We didn't mean for it to become that, but that's totally what it became. So having the end of our pathway be deploy on mission is so freeing, because again, you're not trying to sell people on, we need more volunteers. You really need to be a part. You need to be coming more. You need to be giving more. You need to be volunteering more. What we're trying to help them find is like, here's the people you're called to reach, and how you can go reach those people and be the disciple God's called you to be, so that when you stand in front of Jesus, you can say, I did what you asked me to do. I went and made disciples. So connect, develop, deploy. Well, in that develop phase, we have little triangles that help you move forward. We thought it looked like a fast forward button, but our staff thought it looked like 3 Doritos. So that's what it's become for us.
That's what it is for every church that I work with, because I show them your diagram and I'm like, what does this look like? And I'm like, they thought it looked like Doritos. And after that, everybody's like, totally Doritos.
The 3 Doritos. That's what ours is. That's an amazing pathway. It fits perfect in our culture. But in that developing community, we had like a 2-day, you had to come back another month in order to help settle this debate between whether we were going to do groups and serve teams, or were we going to do groups or serve teams, and try to, as we try to help people move along the pathway. And we ended up going with or, understanding that people will do whatever they want to do. But we only got a certain amount of time with them, and 2 or 3 hours a week. And so we wanted them to try to pick one to develop in community. So I remember that was a huge battle that we had in our room, and really exposed kind of a shift we had to make.
Yeah. I remember that one, because I think and I think a lot of churches struggle with this of, if we're not careful, like our pathway, like I've seen it sometimes, and it's like, if we run the time slot test on this thing, it's like you expect 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours of your people, and it just keeps compounding. And that means that we are expecting 5 hours. And hey, before we ever started on this, like, we weren't making disciples anyway. So like, we've got to now add 6, 7, 8 hours. And it's like, what the challenge that feels impossible in the moment is that we are trying to get more from our people than we've ever gotten, when they're giving us less time than they've ever given us. And it feels like an impossible game to win in the pathway and strategy. We know that we need to better develop disciple makers. We need them to grow in maturity and multiply themselves. And we know that they're not giving us the time they used to. So how do we do that? And I think that's always the challenging game of, man, how do we do it? And what it means is we can't just keep running ministry the same way that we've always run it. And I think sometimes what we do is we just keep running all the same programs, all the same ministries. I'm sure there are many people in here that even in the last 2 years, you probably did pathway work. You got clear language. You relabeled some things. You started calling Sunday school and life groups small groups, just some that meet on Sunday and some that meet during the week. And you started doing things that you may have changed language and gave the appearance of simplifying, but behind the scenes, everything stayed the same. And I think ultimately that it doesn't help us. The pathway, what it needs to do, it doesn't mean that we have to blow everything up or cut everything, but we do have to look and say, how do we be more efficient in the box, in the ministries of the church, so that we can better empower people to go and reach their circle where they're making disciples, where they live, work, and play. And so we've got to be more efficient so we can be more effective. And I think that was one of those moments for you guys. Like, I think kudos for you is you wrestled over it. And what I would say holds true is there's a connection between churches that actually bog down the most in pathway conversations and who are most successful. Churches that just go through the pathway section and they make quick changes, no problem, don't lean into conflict, they don't actually understand what they did. They just relabeled some stuff and they continue on. The churches that struggle the most actually are understanding the implications and are trying to create a new way of doing something, not just make it look different. And when they do that, they end up having stronger conviction behind it and are more committed to actually doing it for the long haul.
Wow. That's a hopeful, little counter, little counterintuitive from what you'd normally think, but I can see that you're actually considering the implications.
Hey, church leader, I hope these podcast episodes and the Movement Ready Church book that Robbie and I have written are helping you get disciple making started in your church. What I'm excited for in the next season is that we're taking the Movement Ready Church book to your church. We're doing one-day workshops where myself or one of the navigators on our Replicate team come on site to your church and work with your staff and leaders to take the principles of this book and to put it into action. What I love about this workshop is that we're not going to do just trainings from the book, but we are actually going to help you create something personal for your church. We're going to give every one of your leaders some essential training to grow as disciple makers and to be a developer of leaders. Secondly, we're going to give you a personalized assessment of your disciple-making culture. And then thirdly, we're going to create a one-year focus and a first step to get started so that you can see your movement begin. So all you have to do is go to movementreadytraining.com to get more information and to get started. You'll see it's pretty simple. Let's jump on a call together. Let's create a personalized training day for your church, and then let our team take care of the rest. And we will bring the Movement Ready Church to your church. So just go to movementreadychurchtraining.com and let's get your movement started. Now, let's get back to our conversation together.
Speaking of your experience with churches, what themes, I don't know how many times you've done this now and seen people argue over and or whatever it is, but what themes do you see when it comes to actually getting that clarity that we're looking for? Because I love what you said, like it clarifies things for the staff, it clarifies things for people about what's most important. What themes do you see the most when it comes to getting that clarity on the pathway?
You named one earlier that I thought was really good. The idea of like the philosophical shift. I think so many churches, they want perfect clarity and it actually prevents them from just getting clearer. And a lot of times I'm just like, hey, is it clear right now? Like, oh no, we don't have any pathway. And then they like push back on it because they're like, our people, I mean, that's not totally true. And what about this person? And I'm like, we have got to create an ideal path of some sort. Is that how everybody's going to go through the path? No, that's not the purpose. Clarity is the purpose. And so, how do we get more clear in it? And so, I think so many times, and I think that kind of leans into probably a second thing that I see. I think we try to get clarity with people who have already been through our pathway, and we miss getting clarity for the next person that's trying to come through our pathway.
That's really good.
And
I think you've developed that since you led us through the process.
Sorry, I made y'all figure that one out on your own. Well, but I think if you get into it when conversations start, you start thinking when you didn't have a pathway or when you didn't have clarity, your all stars of the church found their way through your programming and got to a level of maturity, and then everybody uses, because there was no one way, there was all these different ways that it happened. Everyone uses them as case studies to make their pitch for how the pathway should go. And the truth is, we're really trying to provide structure for the person who most needs it. For the new person that's like, I don't really know what church looks like. I don't really know what my first step is. And so often we use all these case studies of how other people got connected. Or, man, this person loves women's ministry or men's ministry or this class. If we get rid of it, then, or if it's not on the pathway, then what? And they get so stuck in the people who are already at the end of the pathway that they never give the first steps for the people who are just stepping into it. And so a lot of times I'm just like, hey, think about the person who comes to your church next week. Let's create the pathway for them. We can figure out how to have leadership transition conversations with the people who are already bought into our mission. But if we can't get clear on to the new person, where do they even start? We're never going to see this movement go to the next season. You're nodding your head. Does that resonate as you think through the pathway conversations?
Well, one of the main conversations I have with people in my tribe, the Global Methodist Church, is about Sunday school. And what do we do with people in Sunday school? And what do we do with, or what do we do with this and that? And that's the and/or conversation that we had, is we have this one way of thinking about things, but it's a total insider way. And that's a great observation, that we're designing it, or we want to design it, first off, to include everybody so we don't hurt anybody's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we continue to face even 3 years in is, first off, implementation. I thought it was going to get easier. It's like the Dream Disciple. I don't know that it ever gets easier. You're never done with implementing pathway, because you have to constantly keep people focused on it. And there's constant creep to want to add more to it or to emphasize different things. I will say at our best, our staff will go, how does this apply to the pathway? And it does help us kind of baseline all that. So just your whole, like, there's no perfect pathway, and design it for the people who aren't on it yet, but they will become the kind of disciples that you're trying to create. And again, I want to connect the importance of Dream Disciple to pathway, because I used to think vision and then method, and then, motivation was probably mixed in there somewhere. But we're trying to create these kind of disciples, not just trying to get somewhere else down the road.
That's right. And I think one other final thing I would probably add too, in that your theme question, maybe think about it, is this is probably oversimplification, but dadgummit, it reads a lot of mail for people when I first share it. Most pathways, the connection step of the pathway is crowded. The coaching step of the pathway is missing. And the commissioning or the leadership step of the church is fuzzy. Connection is crowded, coaching is missing, and commissioning and leadership is fuzzy. And so there's usually small groups, Sunday school, men's group, women's group, support groups, whatever other group, and another group, and volunteer teams. And all of that is crowded. There's usually not a place where we're developing the skills for disciple making. And then when we talk about leadership, every ministry has their own definition, has their own leadership structure, and we don't necessarily know who a leader is and how we partner with them. And so I think getting clear on that is huge in your pathway. All right, so if that's the design stuff, though, I think one of the things that's a great privilege, Jeremy, for you is like you are now 4 years down the road. I feel like the number one thing that I always have to tell people is like with your pathway, you can design it in day, you can communicate it over the next couple of months, but it will take years for you to
Mm,
live into it.
mm.
And I don't and it is never perfect. It's never arrived. It's never easy. And I think that's a sigh of relief sometimes, and I think people are like, "Oh gosh, okay." You are in year 3 or 4. What tell us a little bit, what does it look like to lead your pathway now, year 3 and 4? Maybe some of the difficulties and maybe some of the successes that you're seeing with it.
Like I said, the main difficulty is keeping people focused on it and not trying to add to it, and keeping focused on it yourself. Or I think what I've had to do, and this is difficult for me, I don't know, maybe it's not for some lead pastors, is let go of control of the pathway and how we're moving people along it to people who are actually gifted at that kind of administrative organizational leadership stuff. And so I don't lead implementing the pathway across 6 campuses and all our ministries. We're just now getting it all implemented into family ministry. We still are implementing in different ministries. How do we bring this pathway? How do they apply to the pathway? So that I'm going to tell you that implementation is going to take longer than you think. Vic told me that, and I'm like, we got it. We can do this. And you got to hand it off to the people who are most gifted to do it. So I don't lead those meetings. I don't lead those processes. Jagger, who this podcast has introduced, he leads all that. He's better at that than me. So I think releasing that, keeping focused on the reason why we're doing it, keeping it in front of people, and not letting things creep into it. I remember it was like, I don't know, in between year 1 and 2, I was like, I don't think the pathway's working like we want. We need to redesign it. And we brought you in to kind of help us with that. And what did you talk to us about?
Here's the $1,000,000 question is when you think about the problems you're facing, you just ask, is the issue that we're facing a design, a communication, or an implementation issue? Design, communication, or implementation. So you guys were like, we made a change. I was like, cool, like totally up for tweaking it. I think in Pathway, you learn stuff. I mean, the goal is not, you don't have a finished product that you never touch for 7 years. What we're trying to do is to refine, not just like recreate something. And so we put up with your team. I think I was like, give me all the problems we're facing. Just fill this chart, guys. It get probably 15 to 20 of them. And I was like, okay, is it a design issue, a communication issue, or an implementation issue? And I think of the 15, I think there was 13 I's and 2 C's and no design issues. And I was like, so guys, what do we want to do? And they were like, I think we just need to execute better. I was like, all right, let's have that conversation. And I again commend you guys because I think y'all did not just go back and redesign. Redesigning is great because we love the idea of creating something new and we can avoid being held accountable to just continuing to run and do the hard work of what is ahead of us. And I think you guys have done a good job of holding yourselves accountable and continuing on in it.
One huge key to that has been, first off, the personal conviction that all of us have about disciple making, about D groups, about helping people get to the place of learning what it means to actually be a disciple and go make other disciples and be deployed on mission, go through Kingdom Circle, that sort of things, and find that for themselves. But secondly, we meet monthly as a team, and we have goals every semester. You've helped us lead through a lot of that and design that process. But that monthly meeting where we're talking about goals and implementation and how we're helping people move along this has been so helpful.
That's right. And we're talking all about the challenges. People are like, oh, like the tone's so different. I do think I am big on like, hey, let's have sober expectations of what the pathway is and what it's not, what's called for it. But I mean, share just a little, what's the impact that it's had? Because I think those are the difficulties. But when you look at people deployed on mission, knowing their unique role, share just a little of what impact that the pathway has had and created.
It's the same freedom for me that I've talked about many times of being able to say to people, we don't want something from you, we want something for you. And here's the process we have designed to use to help you become this kind of disciple and help you, again, what I said earlier, be able to stand in front of Jesus one day and say, I did what you asked me to do. I didn't just read the Bible a lot and pray a lot or go to worship services. I actually know my unique role and how I make disciples, and I'm able to go do that. And we have multiple examples of people working through that. It's not perfect, but going through a life group or a multiply group, D group, and then going to disciple story or kingdom circle and beginning to live into the ministry plan that they've designed. So being able to say that and then watching people do it. And then even now we're sort of redesigning our connections team, how we help people get connected to the life of the church. It's been super helpful. We don't have to come up with some new connections process. Like we have a connections process. We have the pathway right here. And so it's clarifying in that way. It clarifies things for our ministry areas. So many advantages like that.
And y'all are, how many people have named their unique role and stepped into their mission? Is it 5?
Right at 500, yeah.
Man, 500 people being able to reach their kingdom circle, which again, it's like, you don't get there without a pathway. And it's and I would say you don't get there waiting for the perfect pathway either. And so you get there by putting a pathway out there and doing the work of it. I think you guys done it super well. Here's what I want to do in the leader notes. We've been talking about all about pathway stuff. We talk about it in Movement Ready Church. So you can get the book, you can walk through that section there. But also in the leader notes, we have a pathway test that we do. It's 5 questions that you have to answer to create a pathway that develops disciple makers. And so it's going to hit all of these principles, but also it's going to make sure that you don't fall in the trap of creating a pathway that gets you program engagement, but not disciple makers. So if you want to grab that, our pathway test, just get the leader notes, and it'll be included in there as well. And as always, if maybe you're talking about it, you're saying, man, my team needs to work on pathway. We need to do a process like share this with your team, jump on a phone call with our team. We would love to talk with you about how we can help you, not just get a dream disciple, but a pathway to get there. As always, subscribe, share, and we'll be with you next time.